Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm going to kill them all, sir.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Soldier, which came out in 1998, directed by Paul W.S. Anderson. Ian, why don't you give us the synopsis for Soldier?
Well, the story follows Kurt Russell's character, Sergeant Todd 3465. He's a soldier who has been kind of bred from birth and trained to just fight in wars. His unit is replaced by a more powerful, genetically modified unit of soldier, and he is dropped on a trash planet called Arcadia. While living on the trash planet and becoming more accustomed to a peaceful way of life, the genetically modified soldiers invade, and Sergeant Todd has to go Space Rambo on their asses.
Space Rambo?
Yeah.
Exactly. It's one of the main reasons why this film flopped. This is considered one of the worst movies ever made, especially when you're looking at internet scoreboards like Rotten Tomatoes.
I was going to say, those motherfuckers never watched Tekken 2.
No, they didn't. So, Soldier for me has been underappreciated for many, many years. And it had a huge budget, I think of over 60 million.
Ooh,
where
ooh.
Kurt Russell took 20 million of that as a paycheck.
Yeah.
And when interviewed, he literally said, "Yeah, I took this part for the paycheck. Despite having a broken ankle, I refused to take time out because I wanted that paycheck."
Yeah.
So much so that Kurt Russell actually took 18 months off to go and work out to get into the peak physical shape that he is in and presented in this film. To the point where Paul W.S. Anderson was like, "Okay, Kurt, you go and train. I'm going to go and shoot Event Horizon." And as we know, Event Horizon is pretty much considered Paul W.S. Anderson's best movie. Taking from that film, he would bring with him Jason Isaacs and Sean Pertwee from that film and put them in Soldier. Now, interestingly, Soldier has a connection to one of the greatest films in sci-fi, Blade Runner. The biggest connection for me is the fact that it's written by the same screenwriter, David Webb Peebles, who, other than writing Blade Runner, was also wrote the script for 12 Monkeys and Unforgiven.
Nice.
And again, another great sci-fi film and one of the greatest Western films. So it's a very talented writer. However, at the time of this film's production, the script for Soldier was over 15 years old. And a lot of that really comes through in the final film. However, I will say that this is still perhaps the best written Paul W.S. Anderson film to date.
I'm going to be a bit biased with this movie because it's got Kurt motherfucking Russell in it. And I love Kurt motherfucking Russell. I mean, what are we talking? Big Trouble in Little China? The Thing? Escape from New York? Hateful Eight? Fucking Overboard? Death Proof? You know, fucking Captain Ron. Every film I watch him in, it's just fucking awesome. And, you know, people can sit there and say, well, you know, Kurt Russell, I don't care. I don't care. I grew up on John Carpenter movies, and a lot of them starred Kurt Russell. So before I even got to Bruce Campbell, I was just like, I love mullets, I love fast talking, and I love guys who just fucking beat the shit out of weird tentacle creatures. Then I get the Soldier, and I was kind of, you know, I don't know what I was half expecting when I went into it. I knew there were going to be soldiers in it and some kind of battle band.
From the get-go, the trailer for this film straight out lied to its audience. And this is one of the first instances that I can ever think of where a trailer showed images that were not in the film. And that was a giant space battle. So, of course, you see a giant space battle in your trailer, like, that looks good. I'll go watch that.
Yeah.
Doesn't even exist in the film.
No, but I avoid trailers now just for that sole purpose alone. For me, I got it, you know, VHS. Somebody said, "Oh, you like Kurt Russell, you like this." And so, you know, you sit down and watch it. And that first opening intro, I still think is pretty phenomenal, you know, because it literally comes up white text, soldier, you know, in kind of like a military-esque type form. And so you're like, okay, what's going to, you know, where are we going to? We're just going to drop right into a battle? No, we've got babies. Babies for as far as the eye can see, and we're told it's year zero, 1996. 1996. I love those old school sci-fi movies.
So it's actually quite a dark introduction where we're seeing that these babies are essentially being harvested for a very strict regimented training program for an unknown military faction.
It kind of reminds me, I think it's Ants, where they do the same thing, where they've got the little larvae and they drop the hat on or they give it a shovel. You know, I got that impression from this. But the babies are being picked, and you can see the nurses are a bit like,
They don't like it.
They don't like it. Then we jump to year 5, and you've got a bunch of children watching Dobermans or Rottweilers rip apart a pig.
Yeah, that's really quite brutal. And, you know, I like it.
Yeah.
because it's one of those things where it's a case of show, don't tell. And it really does just show you how conditioned these soldiers are.
Yeah.
And actually showing it has a lasting effect on the Todd character throughout the film, because if we had skipped all of this training, I don't think we'd be able to relate to him as much, because we are very sympathetic to him, knowing that he was plucked from a hospital or from a factory and trained in this way. Until the point where we see him on the gun shooting exercise.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's year 16 with the weapon training. And we'd already seen quite a few things building up where Todd's mind is just focused on the mission. Especially when it was year 12 with the squad training and you're seeing the squad running and that guy starts to fall behind. A car turns up, you hear a gunshot, and nobody even flinches. They just carry on running.
Credit to the actor playing him, I think at 12 years old, is Kurt Russell's actual son.
Nice.
So they kind of got the facial likeness, which kind of works.
Yeah. And then you got, like you said, you got the weapon training and you've got these mannequins going back and forth and Todd and his buddy are just blasting the crap out of them. And you see an innocent civilian come in front of the armed terrorist. And Todd's buddy stops firing, but Todd's just like, nope. I have to destroy the enemy. And you sit there like, ooh, that's harsh. But then after a few more times of watching it, you actually think, he's been conditioned to defeat the enemy at all costs. And it relates later on when you have the Moscow incident and you see Todd storming out, you know, with the snow and the white overalls. And you have a woman who's been grabbed by an enemy soldier. And Todd just puts bullets in her. He doesn't intentionally want to murder her, but his aim is to defeat the enemy, who's obviously using her as a shield.
It can kind of make it very difficult after that point to get behind Kurt Russell's soldier at this point. But you know that he's been mentally conditioned that way, so you don't hate on him too much, because we're soon introduced to Jason Isaacs.
Lucius Malfoy.
Who is the film's main villain. And he's more than just the villain, he's also the film's douchebag.
Yeah.
Really, really.
Yeah. Some of his scenes opposite Gary Busey are fucking phenomenal, because Lucius Malfoy is just a dick, you know? But when you balance it with Gary Busey's "my dad" speeches, that you just kind of, you feel like that there's a bond between Gary Busey as Captain Church and his group of soldiers that he's been with for almost 38 years, you know, and they've been through all these different battles together. And then all of a sudden this snot-nosed little fucking punk comes along and says, "Oh, I've made better ones, so let's just get rid of these." But I sit there, and I was doing this for the review, and like I said, I've always liked this film. It's fucking Kurt Russell. But what did the army really have to prove? We've got these new model soldiers, right? Okay, so they're going to replace these old ones. Yeah, well, yeah, that's fine. The older ones are, you know, they've been through a lot. Maybe they need some time off. But even with the new ones fighting the older ones, what were you actually going to do with the old ones? Because we get told when we see that shot of Kurt Russell and all of his buddies sat on their bunks They're between wars. So there's a time of peace. So why the fuck do you need better genetically modified soldiers?
My daddy was in maintenance. And he had a saying. He used to say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Maintenance.
The competition between the old soldiers and the new ones is actually one of my favourite scenes in the film. I like how we go to the firing range and we just see this guy get a 99% hit accuracy.
Yeah.
Despite the maths not actually making sense compared to how many bullets he fired, it gets the message across. The sequence where they're training, the sequence where they're running, to the sequence where Todd is sent up the chains, and then Kane, who's played by Jason Scott Lee, who was fantastic in the Bruce Lee story, is sent up afterwards, and of course gets to the top before Todd does. And then Gary Busey's like, okay, well, what if they fought? And Jason Isaac's like, it's not a fair contest. Send 2 more of your guys up there.
Yeah, that's it. I'm like, this isn't a fight between the soldiers. This is a fight between the old general and the new general. But Jason Isaac outranks Gary Busey, so at any point he could have just turned around and gone, no.
No, but he wants to prove it. He's got an ego and he's spent all that money.
But that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. He needs to prove that these new ones are better. But we already know that they're better. We've seen a training montage of them kicking the shit out of the old ones.
Just need to really cement that home, though.
Yeah, and you need a reason to get Kurt Russell onto Arcadia.
Yeah.
So, him and his 2 buddies try to take on Jason Scott Lee. Jason Scott Lee beats the shit out of them all. But I do love that bit where Kurt Russell was ripped the eye.
Yeah.
And Jason Scott Lee comes down. Kane 607. Kane 607 comes down, and Jason Isaac just rips him.
Just to cement his douchebaggery status.
Yeah. He's just like, how good are you now? You cannot see anything. You've got no depth perception. All you can do is go on point and get shot. And I'm like, wow, you're a dick.
What good is this man now? He's got no depth perception. All he can do is walk point and take the first hit.
So Todd's body's dragged off along with his 2 fallen comrades, and they're dumped into a dumpster ship, and then dragged somewhere across the galaxy and dropped off onto another planet. And straight away, within that one sentence, there's 2 major plot holes or problems.
Right, okay.
With the fact that Todd is a human. He breathes, he needs heat, he needs food.
Yeah.
It's not going to take you a day to get from Earth, or wherever they were, to this other planet.
Yeah, well,
and he's left in a ship that potentially, as some of the characters say, might be unmanned. So there wouldn't be any sort of oxygen or anything on those ships, yet somehow Todd manages to survive this flight through space.
Yeah.
And then survive the crash onto the planet. What?
Well, see, now I look at it as, obviously, we're not entirely sure where the army base was. I always assume they're on their ship. That we see the ship later on. So the ship could be actually anywhere. They must be quite close to Arcadia 234 because Jason Isaacs and the crew actually go there for
yeah, but the ship that drops him off is a dumpster ship.
Yes, it's a dumpster ship, but they must have, to get all that crap on there, they must have transferred it. So there must be some kind of mini, I wouldn't say mini atmosphere, but just enough that Todd was, I put it under that Todd was unconscious the whole time. And so they assumed he was dead, but for all of his training and soldier abilities, I suppose, he was unconscious, he's trying to heal himself, and that's just where he wakes up. And he just happens to wake up just as the thing is opening onto the planet. If he died, the moment they went to chuck him into the dumpster ship, this film would be about half an hour long.
Well, it just seems like the film's gone through great pains to show that this guy's indestructible now.
Yeah, well, he's Kurt motherfucking Russell. Yeah. He can take on 7-foot demons and 10-foot monsters. He can take on fucking anybody. But he gets dropped on this planet, and I do like the sci-fi imagery. It is very retro, it is very old school, but I've always enjoyed old school sci-fi.
It kind of looks like a live-action Fallout.
Yeah, because he falls onto this planet, and there's a big battleship, in the sand.
It looked like an aircraft carrier.
Yeah,
And then I was
yeah.
like, how did one of those dumpsters drop an aircraft carrier on this planet?
It's just all the crap from Earth, isn't
Yeah.
it? You know. But the look at the scavengers, I think, worked really, really well. Somebody took a lot of time to actually say, right, all of your stuff is just taken from the planet. You know, you haven't got many luxuries. You don't have, you've got the bare essentials, basically. It's when Connie Nielsen's character, Sandra, explains to Todd that, they crash landed on the planet and a lot of people died, and they tried to get off through the automated dumpster ships, but it doesn't work. So they had to literally build everything they have.
When we left Earth 12 years ago, we certainly never thought we'd end up here. When we crashed, a lot of people died. A few years later, when the dumpers started coming over and dropping stuff, people tried to get their attention with fires and explosions, but it didn't work. They must be unmanned, or maybe they just don't care.
Now, this film is rife with Easter eggs. Some that are quite easily seeable, and others which I'm still trying to find myself.
Yeah.
Now, one of my favourites is that when you look at the bio description for Todd on the computer interface,
Yeah.
and you can see that he fought at Tenhauser Gate, and he fought at the Shoulders of Orion. And you're like, okay, there's the Blade Runner references.
Yeah.
Todd's been to the locations that Roy from Blade Runner has also been to. I also like the fact that Todd's weapon training, he's trained in the USCM pulse rifle and smart gun from
Nice.
Aliens. And my favourite weapon that he's capable of using is the same weapon as Melvin the Martian is always threatening to use to blow up the Earth. Todd is trained in that weapon. I'm like, I like that. I also like the medals that Todd's been awarded, and it's every single one of Kurt Russell's previous movies. So he's got the MacReady Award, he's got the Pliskin Award, and he's got the award from Backdraft. He's even got the award from Captain Ron. I'm like, that's kind of cool. And even more than that, in the bottom left-hand corner, there's the Kurt Russell Goldie Hawn sort of letters in a box. I'm just like, it's Easter egg heaven, just looking at that screen. So there's even more Easter eggs than that. And this is the one that a lot of, and I haven't been able to find it, but the skidders from Blade Runner, which is the flying ships,
Yeah.
one of those is supposed to be in the garbage. And I've not been able to spot it.
Yeah.
Apparently, there's wreckage from the Lewis and Clark from Event Horizon. There's even wreckage from the ship from Executive Decision in
Whoa.
that rubbish pile. And I can't spot it. So if anyone out there has managed to spot exactly where it is in this film, please let us know in the comments section.
Yeah, we want screen grabs. but this is what I love about this film as well, is that this is like classic sci-fi. If you're a sci-fi fan, you'll enjoy this film. You can sit there and nitpick all the cliches and all the silly twists in the plot that you question. But ultimately, you're sitting down to watch a Kurt Russell sci-fi movie. There's not many reasons you'd be wanting to watch this film unless you really fucking like Kurt Russell and sci-fi and the two of them mixed together. And then when you get there and you realize that there's references to Blade Runner, there's references to all of his other films, you actually take the time to stop and go, oh wait, I want to find that. I mean, I've got to bring up that little green snake that turns up. It turns out that the colonists are obviously building up their little farm, and every now and again, these green asps or cobras or whatever, they'll sneak up and try to attack them, so they try to kill them. And all I could think of was the Bite 2. I was like, that snake is doing so much of a better job than all of the snakes in the Bite 2. He deserves an Oscar as well.
No, he's still got the boot.
We've also got, like I said, Sean Pertwee, who plays Mace. He's kind of like, I suppose, the second in command, one of the council members of the colonists. Sean Pertwee, oh my god. Event Horizon, Dog Soldiers, the list goes on. This guy's got more deaths under his belt than Sean Bean. You know, and this film doesn't shy away from that. He spends this whole time proving himself to Todd about how good of a father he is and, how much of a family man. And I'm just like, dude, you're going to die. You're going to die. You've just given away this whole plot about how good you are. You're going to die.
I really like the supporting cast in this film. I think it's actually really strong. I think Connie Nielsen, who you might remember from Gladiator, delivers a very strong performance in this. I think her character is slightly weak. She's really there just to give some exposition to the audience and to Todd as to the world that he's now in. But I think that her presence in the film is actually quite strong in and of itself.
Yeah. She does have some good scenes where she kind of helps Todd's human side come out a bit more. I mean, there was that scene where he stops and looks at her boobs, and she's kind of a bit freaked out by it, but to him, that's probably the closest he's ever been.
Well, it's probably the first time he's ever... Well, here's the thing, is that this is not an action movie. It has action moments in it.
Yes.
But it's very much a character piece. And a lot of the criticism has come to Kurt Russell's performance in this film, mainly because he has no dialogue, or I think it's recorded 104 words in the entire film.
Yeah.
And so, in my opinion, people that are not emotionally adept don't understand what's going on. Whereas if you can read body language or read people's eyes, Kurt Russell's performance in this is exceptional. It is borderline fantastic, because those eyes, just look into his eyes and he is telling you everything, even more so than what words could probably do.
I totally agree with that. Fucking the fact that you can take somebody like Jack Burton, whose mouth just doesn't stop, you know, or you can take McCready or Pliskin, who are always calculating and working out what they're going to do. And then you get Todd, who only has 104 lines, but his presence, that scene in the canteen where one of the colonists says, "Are you a deserter?" And he just stands up. And it's like, he's going to fucking kill you. But he stops and he just says, "I was replaced." And those 3 words just tell you immediately he's not happy that that's happened, but there's not much he can do.
And it's the first time as an audience as well we get to understand him just a little bit more. His words, when he says them, and it's the delivery in them, it very carefully reminds you of what's happened to him and how he's feeling. And in a very important sequence with Connie Nielsen, he explains to her that he does think and he does feel, but it's fear 100% of the time, followed by discipline. So he keeps his fear in check, but it's his fear of everything and everyone that keeps him alive, so that he's alert and ready for whatever situation he's needed for. And it's always a weird moment when she hugs him, and he has that reaction. It's like,
what's this? But it opens him up, because, you know, for his whole life nobody's ever cared for him at all. And so now when you actually do have people who are looking out for him, you know, he's unsure, but he's reciprocating by looking out for them. You have that really strong scene where he's trying to show their son how to deal with the snake, you know, and he doesn't say anything to the child because the child himself cannot speak. So they deal with it in silence. But the reaction from everybody else, that they're just like, look, he's too violent. You know, he almost got your son killed with the snake. He's almost killed one of our other guys. And, you know, we just need to get him out of here. And it reflects back later when the child actually kills a snake and they go, well, we can live in peace for as long as we want, but we need somebody like him to help us, you know, survive.
We have no doubt that you are a very, very good soldier. But because of your training, we don't think you'll ever be able to function in a group like this. A community of families, of children, where the ability to fight is not the sole purpose of existence.
And again, we kind of follow Todd sort of being given some water and some supplies, and he's sent out into the desert, where he cries.
Yes.
For the first time in his life, he cries, and he's like, what is this shit? Why am I feeling this? And he delivers it all without saying a word.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Now, this is where the drama really ends, because Sean Pertwee comes running back to Todd and says, "Hey, I'm sorry, we were wrong. Come back to the community. Come back to our town. We'll take you in." And then the bad guys show up.
Yeah.
For a routine training exercise on this one waste planet.
Well, it's the security sweep of the Arcadia system. And it's like Captain Church says to Lucius Malfoy, you know, what are we going to do if we come across anybody? Oh, we'll just consider them hostile and we'll just kill them. And I'm like, wow, you're a fucking asshole. You know, these people are pretty much unarmed. They've got a few little rifles that fire stones. You know, but you've got fucking head-to-toe body armor, huge, massive armored vehicles, flamethrowers and rocket launchers and miniguns, and the fucking colonists are the threat. This is why, you know, a lot of people do complain, oh yeah, it just turns into Rambo at the end. I'm glad. I really enjoy Kurt Russell kicking the shit out of all these genetically modified soldiers. After what you'd seen at the beginning, you know, where he'd been beaten and lost, to be able to come back and actually be put in a situation where he knows his stuff, he's honed his skills, and he fucks them all up.
You need any help, partner?
So we do get quite a few scenes of the townspeople just being absolutely eviscerated by these soldiers. They don't stand a chance until Pliskin turns up through the roof on a rope and just lays waste to a couple of guys. And a couple of the townspeople are like, "Oh, you're back."
Yeah.
And I like it. We cut back to Jason Isaacs and he's like, "What? People are dying in there. It must be some kind of... We don't know how many soldiers they've got.
Yeah,
it must be an army. It must be a military standpoint. Pull all the soldiers back."
It's a violent opposition. There must be hundreds of them. And you're like, no, there's like one guy.
Then I'm like, weren't all your guys superior in training to this one? Like, what happened here?
But that's the thing. That's what Captain Church said at the beginning.
They turned into stormtroopers.
It's that they've had no real combat experience. All they've done is been trained and fought against mannequins. You know, Todd has got 30 odd years of fighting in different wars on different types of worlds, so he can adapt quickly to any scenario, you know, and he just proves it easily to all these guys where they're just wandering around with the, you know, they've got all the gas mask on, the body armor. They don't need half that crap that they're carrying. It kind of probably diminishes their senses, where Todd is, you know, he's open up and he's just taking all the supplies they need. I mean, it's even to the point where he uses the environment. He shoots a rocket launcher at a plane propeller, which stabs into a guy. I'm like, it's nice.
It's fucking stupid.
Yeah, it's fucking stupid.
But I like it.
It's Kurt Russell with a rocket launcher. I don't care. He gets his hands on a fucking minigun. He's dropping grenades into tanks.
And one of my favourite shots in the entire film is when the guys are walking in the water.
Yeah.
And he's up against the wall, sort of silhouetted.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He just steps out, thunk, knife right in his face.
Yeah.
I was like,
yeah.
I like that.
My favourite was always the he's got the two guns and he's using it to sniper people, and then they get up there and you realise it's one of their dead buddies and he just lobs grenades at them and blows them up. It's just like, yes!
Despite the fact that the grenade that he threw, we watch all the soldiers go down. And in the next shot, all those soldiers get back up again. I was like, well, that was a waste of a grenade.
Well, more of a distraction. He's still, you know...
He's changing position.
Yeah, he's changing positions.
Right.
Yeah.
So, as you could expect from this sort of film, Todd kills everyone. Everyone. So, of course, Jason Isaacs in his panic decides it's time to leave. We're gonna take off and nuke them from orbit. Only way to be sure.
Yeah.
But tell you what, we can't nuke them from orbit. We've actually got to drag the bomb out of the ship and put it outside.
Yeah.
Okay. Can't just fire it. Fair enough. And Gary Busey's like, no, our soldiers are still out there. We're not leaving. And so we get the showdown between two villains. Even though Gary Busey's character, Captain Church, we are more sympathetic to him because he was sympathetic and cares about his soldiers.
Yeah.
But he's still a villain.
Yes. Yeah.
And he pays the price for his villainy as well. He gets shot.
I think if he hadn't been killed, there may have been a chance that they would have just been imprisoned.
Yeah.
But with him dead, there was nobody to convince Todd to stand down. And Todd certainly wasn't going to take any orders from Lucius Malfoy. So, you know, they just grabbed them. You know, Jason Isaacs, the two other commanders, and they just fucking throw them out on the planet. And I love the fact that you've been following that the black soldier since the beginning. He only had a few little scenes, but the look on his face when he sees that Todd is down, he's kind of a bit upset. Like he was the best. He was kind of my friend. And then there's that part later where he says, "Oh, will we be given weapons?" And she says to him, "No, only soldiers get weapons." And he looks like he's close to crying. But then when they're given this menial task and they come across Todd and the civilians, I'm like, yeah.
They remember.
And they're going to follow him now.
It's almost all done. It's all done silently.
Yeah,
and it's great. They're micro expressions, and there's a sequence I love where Todd just sort of gives him the head nod, and then they do the salute, and I'm just like, it's great. You can feel that these guys have been soldiers in this universe for nearly 40 years.
Yeah,
I like that relationship, despite it being very small. It's a small moment in the film, but of course we cannot go without mentioning the huge climactic fight sequence between Todd and Kane. We had them fight at the beginning of the film. We knew it was building up to this, and we have the showdown. In the first time they fought, we had epic music, whereas this time they fight, we've just got the sound effects of the storm overhead, and just the punches and the kicks.
Jason Scott Lee, is a great martial artist, and he would probably put Kurt Russell down pretty goddamn quickly, but you can see the change in it. I mean, Jason Scott Lee, Kane 607, is high on drugs at this point, to get over the wounds that he's already suffered. And it's the experience from Kurt Russell's Todd character where, Kane is just using his kicks, his punches, he's using brute force, and Todd's using the environment all the way up to where he looks down at that blade. And Kane's like, "You want this? I'll get it." And Todd's like, "Actually, that was a distraction. I'm going to use this fucking great big helicopter rotor blade to slice you open." You're like, you got done. It's a great battle sequence. It reminds me of Universal Soldier, Lundgren versus Van Damme at the end of that one. Just two badass soldiers coming to it and beating the shit out of each other.
It's weird that there's no throwaway line at the end, the one-liner. And of course, as you know, that Todd doesn't speak hardly throughout the film, so there's no one-liners. And it's kind of like that odd moment where you're waiting for it. It's like, no, nothing. I have many favorite sequences in the film. I really love the training montage, even though it just looking back at it now, it looks like 4 different levels from Call of Duty, like all the way up to the space. It's just like, wait a minute, you predicted. Just in terms of its visuals, it's very much sci-fi. I love Arcadia, the planet. It does at times look like a set.
Yeah,
and it does at times, the storm effects look like obvious CGI effects.
Yeah.
But the actual setting works. The location works. All of the technology that either the corporations have or the low-tech Fallout universe that the colonists have had, or the refugees have had on this planet, all of it looks and feels lived in and real. And so I think that it really does help create that universe. You can believe it. You can almost put yourself in there. Most of my favourite scenes are all with Todd, with Kurt Russell. Just, he never has a vacant expression. His eyes are always telling you something. And so his performance in the film is fantastic. So the sequence with the montage with him at the beginning in the training, all the way up through to the final fight with Kane, so many favourite and little moments in the film that I really like. I'll tell you, there's one sequence in the film that I don't like.
What's that?
And that's Sean Pertwee's death. Because there was a montage in the middle of the film which threw me out. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? We're in this sci-fi, character-driven movie.
Yeah.
And then we cut to this Celtic music by Lorena McKennitt.
And,
her music is great. But in the middle of this film...
I got that.
And then the montage, and it's like, okay, so what is it saying? It's like, okay, we're watching Todd observe the family life. It looks like he's developing feelings.
Yeah, that's what I got. For me, it was telling me that he's not just a killing machine.
Yeah.
He's garnering emotions.
He's learning.
Yes. To this family, to this little boy, you know, he reflects a lot to the little boy.
Yeah.
You know, thinks about probably his own childhood, about how he doesn't speak. You know, he's certainly, I wouldn't say he's in love with
not yet.
with Nielsen, but
it's
you know,
definitely leaning that way.
Yeah, he does find her attractive, and when he first wakes up, you know, from when he first lands on the planet, there's a kind of look in his eyes that he's like, "Is that an angel?"
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Am
well,
I
it's
dead?
weird
kind
because
of
if
thing.
you look at everyone else in the town, they're all dressed in rags.
Yeah.
Whereas it looks like she's just come from a designer shop,
Yeah.
got the makeup on, she's
Yeah.
the one with the medicine, and so it kind of feels a little bit forced, not too much, but enough to the point where when Sean Pertwee's had his leg blown off,
Yeah.
and Todd's trying to bandage him up, and then he dies. And I was like, oh no, it's just set itself up so that Todd can now be the new dad and the new husband to this family.
Yes, yeah, but
And it does do that, because at the end the boy's just like, pick me up, carry me, like you're my new dad now.
yeah, no, I don't get that. You know, it does look like that.
It does. It very
does.
much
It
so
very
does.
much looks like that. But you've got to remember as well that Todd is a 38-year-old fucking veteran soldier who's probably still a virgin, unless he's been raping his way through the cosmos. I don't know. But he doesn't know how to be a father. He's going to be protective to this child, yes, but he's going to be protective in a soldier way. He's probably going to teach him things as he grows up, but he's going to teach him discipline in a soldier way. And everything that he's going to do for this family is going to be from being a soldier. You know, he's not just going to turn around and go, like, oh yeah, your husband said, now we're going to have sex and make babies. You know, he's probably going to be like,
He's probably afraid to touch it anyway.
That's it. Yeah, it'll probably fall off anyway.
So yeah, of that dynamic of the film, you know, you can either love it or hate it. It does feel forced and contrived. To me, on repeat viewings, it's like, all right, now we've got to get to this story point so that this can happen.
Yeah.
I will say that there was a sequel planned for this film, but as I said at the beginning of this review, this is one of the biggest bombs in Hollywood. So there's never going to be a sequel to this.
I don't know. Hollywood's been wrong before.
No, it'll be a reboot, if anything.
Yeah.
Unit 703, do you copy?
My favourite scenes, well, I love the film. It's got Kurt Russell in it, so done. But Gary Busey in any of his My Daddy lines, they're just fucking awesome. They're so inspiring. You know, my daddy says about putting a nail into a piece of wood, you just beat the fucking shit out of that nail. Just keep hitting it. Hit it until the wood breaks and burns up and explodes. And you're like, ooh, okay. You know, any of Todd's, Kurt Russell's scenes, especially the ones where he does actually speak. You know, the cafeteria scene about how he was replaced by a better soldier. You know, to them, it's enough information. You've already seen the build-up, but for them, it's just like, look, you know, I was replaced and dropped here, so that's about it. And then just that final one line. You know, you say that he doesn't have any one-lines in this film, but when Connie Nielsen says to him, what are you going to do while he's tooling up? And he just looks at the camera and goes, I'm going to kill them all, sir. You're like, fucking yeah. He's going to go out there and fucking kill them all. That's what he says. He says exactly what he's going to do. So, yeah, I love this film.
Soldier. Get 17. What are you gonna do?
I'm going to kill them all, sir.
I recommend Soldier. It's odd, because in memory, the film was kind of always average. And recently, knowing that I was going to be rewatching the film, I was like, okay, you know, this might now just become a guilty pleasure.
Yeah.
But now I recommend it. It's a film that's sort of grown on me. The more times that I watch it, the more I appreciate Kurt Russell's performance. Even though he said he did it for the paycheck, wow.
Yeah.
He has defined this character just like he did all of his other major characters in some of his more well-known films. This film is not the best either. It's not fantastic, it's not great, it's good. But it's definitely not as bad as half of the criticisms that have been launched at this film are in the past. If anything, it could be a guilty pleasure. If anything, for some people, it might even be one of their favourite sci-fi movies. It's a really good movie. It's a solid film experience that will make you feel and make you think.
Yeah.
And it's also one that you can turn your brain off and just enjoy the action, because a lot of the story elements that as it's being pushed forward are questionable, but at the same time still enjoyable. So definitely, you owe it to yourself. If you're a fan of sci-fi, or definitely a fan of Kurt Russell, you can enjoy this weird blend of B-movie and sort of A-movie combination. It works.
I definitely recommend Soldier. 1, Gary Busey. 2, Jason Isaacs. 3, Sean Pertwee. 4, Kurt motherfucking Russell.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
Hurry.